everyone, today we're going to be working on Unit 4, LT2 Notes, Zero Product Property with Factoring. So our last lesson you learned how to do this. So if you have x plus 5 and x minus 9 equals 0, you're going to set them both equal to 0. So I'm going to start with x plus 5 and set that equal to 0, and then x minus 9 and set that equal to 0. Remember, if your x is all by itself, you can just take the opposite. So if it's a plus 5, you can say x equals negative 5. And same with this one. If my x is a 1, then I can say x minus 9. I can just take the opposite, and my x is going to equal that positive 9. Okay, number 2 is going to get a little bit more difficult because you don't have x as, x is not a 1. So now I'm going to say 2x plus 4 equals 0, and 5x minus 9 equals 0. Okay, I want to get 2 and x all by themselves first. So I'm going to say minus 4 on both sides. So 2x is left on the left, and a negative 4 is on the right. And 2 times x, I'm going to divide by 2. So now x equals negative 2. Okay, now I'm going to move to 5x minus 9 equals 0. I'm going to say plus 9 on both sides. So 5x is left on the right, a positive 9 is left on the, 5x is left on the left, and a positive 9 is left on the right. 5 times x, we want the opposite, so I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides. And if you recall from our last lesson, we can leave that as a fraction, so you can just leave 9/5. In the previous problems, your numbers have already been factored for you, so it was easy to set them equal to 0. Well, these ones that we're working on today, they're not already factored. So first you're going to have to factor and then set equal to 0. So we're going to go ahead and do this with number 1. I'm going to start with my x, and then remember I have my a, my b, and my c on there. And to get that a, to get that top number, we take our a times our c. Well, if there's no number in front of a, it's really a 1. So 1 times 5 is 5, so I'm going to go ahead and put that 5 on top. And then my b is bottom, so my 6 goes on bottom. And then I have to figure out what numbers multiply to 5 but add to 6. So the factors of 5, there's only 1 in 5. And luckily, 1 plus 5 equals 6, so that works. So I'm going to take my b value, and I'm going to replace it with these two right here. So I'm going to rewrite my problem with that replaced b value. So I'm going to say x squared plus 1x plus 5x plus 5. Remember to put that c value at the very end. Okay, and as you learned previously, now we're going to take those and we're going to stick them inside the box and then pull out the outside. So x squared goes in your top left box. My kitty corner boxes are my b's, so 1x and 5x. And then my c, whoops, I wrote c instead of the actual number. My c value is going to be that 5. So that c value, which is 5, goes right there. Okay, now I'm going to see what's in common. So when I look right, this first row right here, or first column, I have x squared and 1x, and I see that they both have an x in common. So I'm going to put an x on top. Then I have a 5x and 5, so if I'm going to the right, I have 5x and 5, and 5x and 5 both have a 5 in common. So I'm going to put a 5 there. Now I'm going to do my rows. So I have x squared and 5x. So I'm looking at these two right here, x squared and 5x. They both have an x in common. So I'm going to put an x there. And finally, I'm going to look right here. I have a 1x and a 5, and I see that the only number that both of those have in common is a 1. Okay, so now if we were to rewrite this, it would look like this. And this is what we did on our previous assignments. We had x plus 5, and then x plus 1, and that was set equal to 0. And then if you remember right, we took that x plus 5, so now I'm going to say x plus 5, set that equal to 0, and x plus 1, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. Okay, this one, the opposite of plus 5, so that's going to be a negative 5. And this one, the opposite of plus 1, is going to be a negative 1. So these two are our answers right there. And then you're done with that one. Okay, so let's look at the next one. I have x squared plus 4x minus 21 equals 0. So again, this one doesn't have just our factors already. So now we have to factor it. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. Start with my X. I have my A, my B, and my C. So I know negative 21 is going to go on top, and that 4 goes on bottom. So now I'm going to find all the factors of 21. So I know that 1 and 21, 2 won't go into 21, 3 and 7 will go into 21, 4 won't go into 21, 5 won't go into 21, 6 doesn't go into 21, and now I'm back at 7. Well, I have a negative on the top and a positive on the bottom. That means that my smaller of the two numbers is going to be my negative. Okay, so now I'm going to say negative 1 plus 21, or I could say 21 minus 1. Well, 21 minus 1 would be 20, and 7 minus 3 would be that 4. So let's put a 7 here and a negative 3 here, and we get that 4. So now let's rewrite the problem with our b value being replaced with those two there. So now I have x squared plus 7x minus 3x, and then I'm going to end with my c value, minus 21. And now I'm going to draw that box. And x squared is going to go on the top left. I have 7x and negative 3x, and then negative 21 on the bottom. So I'm going to find what do I have in common with my first column right there, x squared and 7x. Well, I know that they both have an x in them. I'm going to move to the right. And what's in common with negative 3 and negative 21? Well, right away I see they both have a negative. So I know a negative is in common, and 3 will go into 21, so I'm going to use that 3. Now I'm going to do the rows. So I'm going to say x squared and negative 3x. They only have an x in common, so I'm just going to put that x there. And 7x and negative 21 finally. So we're down here, 7x and negative 21. Well, they both don't have a negative, so I'm not going to take a negative out, but I know 7 will go into 21, so I'm going to do that there. So now I have x minus 3, and then x plus 7, and those are going to be set equal to 0. So now I have to rewrite x minus 3 equals 0, and then x plus 7 equals 0. So this one is going to be the opposite of minus 3, so x equals a positive 3. And this one's going to be the opposite of a positive 7, so this one's going to be a negative 7. So these are your two answers. Okay, let's move on to number 5. X squared minus 7x plus 10. Again, I have to start with factoring it. So my 10 goes on top. I have a negative 7 on the bottom. Okay, because my 10 is positive and my negative 7 is obviously negative, I know that my two factors are going to have to be a negative, because two negatives make a positive, but two negatives make a bigger negative. So I'm going to do a negative, I must be too close to the side here. It's clicking something wrong here. There we go, negative 2 and negative 5. So I'm going to use those for my b value. So now this b is not that 7, now it's that negative 2 and negative 5. So I'm going to start with rewriting. So I'm going to say x squared minus 2x minus 5x. And then I'm going to end with my c value, so plus 10. Remember, you have your a, your b, and your c. Now you're going to draw your box. X squared, and then negative 2x, negative 5x, and 10. So I'm going to start with x squared and negative 2x, and I see that they both have an x in them. And I have a negative 5x and a 10, so I'm moving to the right. Negative 5x and a 10. Both of them do not have a negative, so I can't take that negative out, but I do know that they both have a 5 in them. Now I'm going to do my rows. So I'm going to say x squared and negative 5. And again, they both don't have a negative, but they both do have an x. And then finally, this bottom one, negative 2x and 10. And I see that they both, oops, wrong color, they both have a 2 in them. Okay, so now I'm going to write x plus 5. Oops, getting too close to the side. And x plus 2. and set that equal to 0. And then you're going to rewrite both sides of it. So x plus 5 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. So the opposite of plus 5 is negative 5. So x equals negative 5. And the opposite of plus 2 is negative 2. So this is going to be x equals negative 2. And those two will be your final answers. Okay, number 6. Number 6, remember you take your a times your c. So 2 times 3. That's going to give me a 6 and a 7 on the bottom. Okay, and I'm thinking what multiplies to 6 but adds to 7? Well, 1 and 6 are the only numbers that do that. So I'm going to replace my b value with these two and rewrite the equation. So 2x squared plus 1x plus 6x plus 3. Once I have those, I can create my box. 2x squared here, 1x, 6x, and 3. I'm looking at these two, 2x and 1x. I see that they both have an x in common. Move over and do 6 and 3. I see that they both have a 3 in common. Okay, moving along, I have 2x and 6x. I see that they both have a 2 and an x in common. And then finally, I have a 1x and a 3. I see that they both, the only number they both have in common is a 1. So now I'm going to say x plus 3 and 2x plus 1 equals 0. So x plus 3 equals 0 and 2x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, this one's going to be the easy one because I can just say x equals negative 3. This one we're going to have to solve. So I'm going to take away 1 from both sides. I'm going to say 2x equals negative 1 and then divide by 2, divide by 2. So x equals negative 1 divided by 2. We're just going to leave that as a fraction, negative 1/2. Okay, number 7, we're going to continue on with starting with our x. We factor it first, so 3 times 5, that's going to be a 15. Then you need a 16 here. So I'm thinking all the factors of 15 that would add up to 16. Well, 1 and 15 are the only numbers that multiply to 15 but add to 16. I'm going to rewrite that and replace it with this. So I'm going to say 3x squared plus 1x plus 15x plus 5. I'm going to create my box. 3x squared goes in the top left, 1x, 15x, 5. 3x squared and 1x, they both have an x in them. 15 and 5, they both have a 5 in them. Three x squared and 15, and that 15 should have an x by it. I apologize, I missed that, so I'm going to put an x there. So 3x and 15x, they both have a 3 and an x in them. So I'm going to put a 3 and an x out front. And then finally, we have 1x and 5. And they both have just a 1 in them. So I'm going to rewrite x plus 5. Oops, I'm not sure what happened there. Try that again. X plus 5 and 3x plus 1 equals 0. So x plus 5 equals 0 and 3x plus 1 equals 0. This one's the easy one. X equals negative 5. So we have to do a bit of solving, so I'm going to take 1 away. So I have 3x equals negative 1, divide by 3, divide by 3, x equals negative 1/3. So you have x equals negative 5 and x equals negative 1/3. Okay, number 8, our last one here. I'm going to go ahead and start with factoring. A times the C, so I have a 7 on top and an 8 on the bottom. Well, I know only 1 and 7. And because our A value is a 1, we can use the shortcut method. And we could have done this earlier in the slides too, but we're just doing this now. So I'm going to say x plus 1 and x plus 7. So we can skip that box method and set them equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 7 equals 0. Here we're going to have x equals negative 1, and here we're going to have x equals negative 7. Okay, you are ready to work on Unit 4 LT2 notes, factoring with the zero product property. Let us know if you have questions.